validate myself now. I can validate my emotions. That is a very important part of the process to be able to understand what does that have to do with the coronavirus crisis, those stages of grief, that it is actually what they are experiencing too. Just to mention briefly what the stages are, you should just hurry up and get to the final stage of acceptance. And we really need to be very kind to ourselves and to our family and to our loved ones and to Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Whole Wellness Method video. I'm Lida Sportel at the upcoming lidashealing.com and the Whole Wellness Method. And in this video, I want to talk about the stages of grief. And this is something that was created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she's written some amazing books. And the stages of grief mainly are applied to situations where we have actually lost a loved one, or even in situations where we have ended a very important relationship, or we are experiencing any sense of deep loss or grief. And it is something that I use with my clients a lot because it makes things it puts things into a different perspective. You start to understand what it is that you're going through. You start not to feel so crazy about the experiences and the emotions that you're feeling. You're starting to feel like, okay, I see, I can validate myself now. I can validate my emotions. And that is a very important part of the process to be able to understand what it is that we're going through. So now you might be wondering, what does that have to do with the coronavirus crisis that we are all experiencing? Well, I was thinking about it, and I've been talking to my clients and their process through this crisis and what they're going through. And I started identifying those stages of grief, that it is actually what they are experiencing too. And I start to make a correlation there and see that actually it is a form of loss, it is a form of grief that we are all collectively going through right now. And each one of us is going through it quite differently. So we can't really say that we are all having the same experience with this, but there are certain maybe principles, maybe some of these stages that as I'm going through them and I'm sharing them with you, you might find that we do all kind of experience some similar emotions here, that we are all going through some stages of grief and loss, and that we are, in that sense, although our personal experience is quite different and how this is affecting us on an individual level is quite different, but in terms of those deeper emotions and what we are really feeling in our hearts is actually quite similar. So that's what I wanted to offer you today, is just a little discussion on those 5 stages of grief and what that has to do with what we are experiencing right now. And you might find this helpful. You might find that it validates you a little bit in what you're going through, and that you also have that hope that as you move along these stages, at the end, there is more of a peaceful stage with, again, what we're going through. And I know that's easier said than done, but we'll discuss it further and we can see how you feel in this process. So just to mention briefly what the stages are, and then I'll go into each one of them in a lot more detail. So the first one is denial, then we have anger, then we have bargaining, then we have depression, and then we have acceptance. And it doesn't mean that we go through these stages in a linear fashion. It doesn't mean that we start at denial and then go to anger and then bargaining and then depression and then acceptance. Sometimes we do start this way, but then we can kind of go back to some previous stages or skip stages. So it could go any way. And before I start exploring each one of them, I also wanted to say that none of them are bad. So this is not a discussion about negative emotions, or like you shouldn't be feeling this way, or you should just hurry up and get to the final stage of acceptance. This is not about that. This is about truly just seeing where we're at right now, and being gentle with ourselves, because it's a very, very challenging time. And we really need to be very kind to ourselves and to our family and to our loved ones and to the people around us, and not, in any way try to rush this process or to try to judge ourselves or others if they are at a stage where, you know, we think is a negative stage or anything like that. So I just want to say that, but it will make more sense as I'm moving along as to what I mean by what I just said. So let's get into the first stage. A little bit at a time, and there's so much I can handle. Protect myself from really understanding how huge this issue is. Action really aggressively, we've seen that at the grocery stores. You're becoming stronger in your ability to start feeling a little bit more. Reaction of fighting or fleeing or freezing suppress our feelings. We push them aside, we don't, and slowly we start getting stronger, we start feeling. Okay, so let's talk about the first stage, which is denial. You might want to look back into the beginnings of this whole crisis, and how maybe, depending on where you're at and in which country you're at, when was it that you started hearing about this, or when you felt that it was starting to come a little too close to you, and how you were reacting at those stages. What I observed within myself and within others and my clients is that there was a little bit of that denial, which is that, there was this, oh, this is nothing. I don't believe this is happening. This is not going to be affecting us. This is just happening in China. This is just happening in Italy. This is just happening there. Oh yeah, it came here in the United States, but it's not going to be that bad. Why is everybody acting this way? People are overreacting. They're panicking. So there was some sense of denial in terms of, I can't believe this is really that important, or that I even need to be concerned about it, but yet I'm judging others for the way that they are experiencing it. Again, all that I'm saying right now is not to judge yourself, is not to say that you did something wrong. It is just to bring awareness. What we want to do is bring awareness to these stages, and if maybe you're still in that stage, to just start noticing that this is how I'm feeling, or perhaps your spouse is still in that stage, or perhaps somebody else in your family is still in that stage. So it just brings you a little bit of a deeper understanding towards yourself, towards others. And it is something that you can learn and practice and be aware of in general, even when all the situation is over. But I think that because this situation right now with the coronavirus is actually a big issue that is impacting all of us, it is important that we start looking a little bit deeper within ourselves. How is it that we're really dealing with it? And if we are in that denial stage, how is it that we are really experiencing that? And is it helping us to stay stuck in this stage? Because one of the things that I didn't mention in the intro here is that it is healthy to eventually move through these stages and get to the last stage of acceptance. This is the goal. Although you don't want to rush it, you don't want to push yourself through this, at the same time, you want to be aware of the fact that what's healthy, what is going to help you and your family, ultimately, is to go through these stages and get to the stage of acceptance, because it isn't in the stage of acceptance that you finally start feeling a little bit more peace, a little bit more calm, a little bit more clear-headed, knowing what you need to do and how you need to adjust to everything that's going on. So, having said that, again, it's not to judge yourself if you're still in the denial stage. Many people that and clients that I have are still there, and there's no timeline to say, okay, within a week you have to, go to the next stage or anything like that. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then let me just read to you a couple things that David Kessler, who has worked a lot with Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote the 5 stages of grief, what he's saying, and then you can see how maybe you relate to that as well. So in that denial stage, the world becomes meaningless and overwhelming. So you might feel a little bit of that overwhelm, or a lot of bit of that overwhelm. And then he also says life makes no sense. Maybe you're experiencing that, or maybe you experienced that and now you're kind of trying to make sense of everything, but maybe you felt like this is making no sense. It's a little bit of that shock. That's what denial is. It's that shock of, is this really happening? Like I almost can't even believe this is real. Like I almost feel like I'm in a dream, that I'm just gonna wake up from this nightmare and it will be all over. That's part of what denial makes us feel like. And denial is a coping mechanism. It's a unconscious coping mechanism that we have to be able to get through really difficult situations. Because imagine if we, the minute we learned about, the possibility of the coronavirus affecting us, if we went into complete, really deeply feeling the how global and how huge this issue will be, it will really affect us in deep ways that perhaps we wouldn't even be able to manage and take care of our family and so denial is a coping mechanism to help us keep going, to help us kind of pace out our feelings, is how he calls it. Like, I don't want to feel everything at once. I want to pace it out, where I'm feeling a little bit at a time, and there's so much I can handle, so I can handle a little bit at a time. So it's a protective mechanism. It's a coping mechanism that's very much needed, and we use that in many aspects of our lives, denial. But in this case, it is to, again, have compassion towards yourself and say, I am in that stage, or I was in that stage, and the reason was because I had to really protect myself from really understanding how huge this issue is. And some of the experiences, that we have when we are in that state of shock is what you have probably heard, the fight or flight, and I want to add freeze. So fight or flight or freeze response. So some people react to this by fighting, by getting aggressive, by going and taking action really aggressively. We've seen that at the grocery stores. Or it could be flight, which means just really running away from the situation and kind of hiding and not wanting to even deal with it. Or freezing, which is going completely numb, going completely, feeling paralyzed, feeling like this, I don't know what to do. And it's kind of that sense of really feeling paralyzed completely. So you might have had one or all 3 of these responses that would fall under the denial stage. All this is normal, very, very normal. So again, do not feel like any of that makes you crazy or makes you not handling this appropriately or anything like that. So again, if you're having any feelings like, is this really happening? Is this really that bad? Why is everybody acting this way? All of these are normal questions to ask, And the thing that is important to also know is that in this stage of denial, as you're starting to really feel and explore and allow yourself to kind of see what's going on and ask these deeper questions, you're becoming stronger in your ability to start feeling a little bit more. Because part of the purpose of the denial stage, of the denial coping mechanism, is to have us not feel. So when I'm going into the reaction of fighting or fleeing or freezing, it's just so that I don't feel. And so that's why denial is a protective mechanism, because it protects us from feeling. Because if I were to feel instantly what the impact of this coronavirus has, I would feel so many overwhelming feelings that I feel like my body wouldn't be able to handle it, or my mind, I would go crazy. So, but as we're moving gently out of the denial stage, we are starting to feel. And it can get a little hard. It can get a little harder, because when we deny, we suppress our feelings. We push them aside. We don't feel them very much. But slowly feelings are starting to creep in. And one of the main feelings that we see that starts creeping in after a while, or even maybe right away, is anger, which is the next stage, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So again, realize that in the denial stage, the goal is the purpose of that coping mechanism, unconsciously speaking. That's what we have as unconscious. In our unconscious, we have that denial coping mechanism, the defense mechanism, to be able to not feel those emotions that we think we cannot handle. But then slowly we start getting stronger, we start feeling a little bit more, and that's where anger and some different emotions that I will talk about start creeping in. To admit that we are angry, it is actually a necessary part of the process. It's not a bad stage, it's not a bad emotion. It's one of the easier emotions that we can experience. That anger gives you a little bit of that sense of control. We're all justified to feel that anger and to project it out to go through the stage of anger, to allow yourself to feel the anger of intense fear, of uncertainty, of the complete unknown, of Okay, so the second stage is anger. And what is interesting about this stage is that it's actually a necessary stage. Although it's not a cool, thing to talk about, it doesn't make us feel good to admit that we are angry and that we are experiencing anger. It is actually a necessary part of the process. So in order to get to the acceptance, which I have alluded to as being the last stage, we have to go through anger in one way or another. And that doesn't mean it has to be, the extreme kind of anger. And it is important that we don't get stuck in anger either. So I want to talk about a few things here about the emotion of anger. And I want you to know, number one, it's not a bad stage. It's not a bad emotion. It's a necessary emotion, but you don't want to get stuck in it. Because if you get stuck in it, then you don't move through the other deeper emotions. Because anger is one of the easier emotions that we can experience. Although it's not accepted in our society, and maybe you grew up in a family that you weren't allowed to feel anger, it still is one of the easier emotions to experience than the deeper emotions of shame, of guilt, of fear, of pain. So what I just said is anger is actually, if we go deeper, if we can look what's underneath the layer of anger, we find that usually is one of these other emotions I just mentioned. So what anger is hiding is pain, is fear, is guilt, is a feeling of complete powerlessness and helplessness and despair, and perhaps even deep sense of depression and loss. So the anger, though, before we go into these deeper emotions, although I did mention them, the anger, what it does, it makes us feel a little bit more in control. In a situation where there is this loss, there's this our every plan we've had, every event we had, anything that we knew the way we knew it before in our routines, and everything we were doing is being disrupted. So we feel completely out of control. And not only our lives have been turned upside down, also we have this threat and this constant fear of, what if I contract the virus? Or if I did contract it, am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? And am I going to, you know, impact other people? Am I going to, make a mistake and pass it on to my loved ones or to my community? So there's this constant state of feeling uncertainty, out of control, feeling we cannot really be in charge of anything at this point. We feel so powerless. Well, what anger does is it makes us feel a little bit more in control. It makes us feel a little bit more that I have some power in me and I can target it towards something. So think about yourself and, if you experienced some of these emotions of anger, where were they targeted towards? It could be that you got upset with China and the way they handled the virus. Maybe you are upset with the doctors, or maybe you're upset with our politicians. Maybe you're upset with the way other countries have handled this, or maybe you're upset with the whole believing in that this is a conspiracy theory. Maybe you are angry at your own body. Maybe you're angry at your spouse, and now especially that we're all forced to be locked down inside the house with our family. There's no escape. We can't go do anything outside of the house, so we really have to face all our problems and everything that happens in our families, which I will have a few more videos talking about ways to really handle these kinds of issues that are coming up. But back to our topic here, maybe you're seeing yourself getting angry at your kids, at your spouse, at your roommates. Maybe you're seeing yourself getting angry at God, at life, at the universe. Why is this happening to me? Why, I had all these plans, I had all these savings. I was, I needed my job. Maybe you're mad at your employer, and how they, they're treating you in this process, and they're not able to support you. It could be targeted at anything and anybody, and including God, including the universe, including, a power that's above you, feeling like, why are they, or God is not doing anything to get us out of this or to protect us from this? Well, this is a whole separate discussion that I might do some videos on a little bit of those deeper spirituality concepts. For the purposes of this video, I do want you to just look at that anger. Don't judge it. Don't be like, well, I shouldn't be angry at God, or I shouldn't be angry at my spouse, or I shouldn't be angry at, this and that. But try not to shoot yourself. Try to just notice that anger and see that anger gives you a little bit of that sense of control. It gives you that sense of power, because now you have a specific target that you're upset with, that you're angry about. The news, they really reinforce that anger in us. They really make us feel like they really reinforce the fear and the anxiety, but they also reinforce that sense of blame, that it's because of this person not making the right call or the right decision, or whatever it is that's going on around us right now. There's so many different things that we can point our fingers at and say that it's because of that or because of that. And while that is justified, I mean, to a certain degree, we're all justified to feel that anger and to project it out to certain people, certain countries, certain situations, certain decisions. At the same time, we do want to look a little bit deeper. We do want to look at the fact that if we stay stuck in that anger, and we don't look deeper, then it is going to take a toll on ourselves. It is going to take a toll on our families if we are just stuck in that place of anger. So while I said, it is very important to go through the stage of anger, to allow yourself to feel the anger, to journal about it, to express the anger in a safe way to your therapist or to your coach or to your friends or to your family if it's something that they can support you with without feeling like you're projecting it onto them. So do express that anger in a safe way as much as possible. And if it comes out in ways that you're not proud of, then reflect on it, journal about it, and then try to look a little bit deeper. Try to look at what is beneath that anger. And like I mentioned earlier, there are those deeper feelings of intense fear, of uncertainty, of the complete unknown, of pain, of loss, of guilt, and other different feelings. So that was anger. And next we are going to move on to bargaining. Happened, then this, or if this could happen, then that. Behind that bargaining, what's hiding is a sense of go through these emotions and then reach the acceptance. And that doesn't mean we're not going to look for solutions, because we have to. So I hope this is making sense. I know some of these concepts might be a little deep. Feel overwhelmed by this discussion, just try to be gentle with yourself. Notice what it is for you. Don't judge it, and just become aware of it. All right, the bargaining stage. This one is interesting. It could play out in many different ways. One is that you have this tendency to say things like, if only, they had contained it better in China, we wouldn't be experiencing this right now. If only that vaccine would come out, we would all be saved. What if I had done this and that, then this wouldn't be happening right now. What if I hadn't traveled, then, all this would not be going on right now. If I had prepared better and had gotten enough food, now I wouldn't be stressing out so much. What if I had, gotten a different job and had started working online, now I wouldn't be facing the financial consequences of what's going on by not being able to go to my job and be paid. So there are many examples. I could spend hours just trying to come up with different examples or sharing the examples that my clients are going through. But you want to find your own. It has a bargaining sense to it, meaning that there's this what if ... if only ... you might be even finding that you're bargaining with God, or with whoever you pray to, or whoever you believe is, watching over us in any way, meaning that you might be like, if I will, in situations where there's loss. I know a lot of my clients, they've shared with me in the past where they would be like, God, if you can only heal, my mother and she doesn't die, I will devote the rest of my life to helping others and to being a better citizen, and I will never get angry again. I will never abuse drugs again, whatever it is. So there's this sense of bargaining, this sense of, had this not happened, then this, or if this could happen, then that. It's a very normal stage to go through, and you might not exactly it might not be exactly clear right now as I'm saying this, how it's playing out for you, but just again, become aware and see, maybe you'll start noticing throughout the day this pattern of bargaining. And what I want you to know is that behind that bargaining, what's hiding is a sense of regret. It's a sense of guilt. So it is important to notice that bargaining, because it does hide those deeper emotions of regret and guilt, and we're trying to cover up that sense of um, regret by trying to bargain things out, trying to say, well, if I hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened. And it's normal to do that. But again, we have to understand that the goal here is to really allow ourselves to be able to go through these emotions and then reach the acceptance, which is that whatever it is that has happened, how is it that I'm going to deal with it now, rather than getting stuck in the pattern of anger, or in the pattern of denial, or in the pattern of just this bargaining, this sense of if only I can do this now, or if only I can look for that next solution, then that will be better. And that doesn't mean we're not going to look for solutions, because we have to adjust to this. We have to learn how to accept this and live with this. But we have to do that from a place of acceptance, rather than from a place of running away from our feelings, or running away from what's really going on within us. So I hope this is making sense. I know some of these concepts might be a little deep right now, so I just wanted to offer you how I view some of these processes, and then you can take little nuggets from what I'm sharing. And in my private sessions, I can go a lot deeper, or however each person needs to be supported in this. But don't feel overwhelmed by this discussion. Just try to be gentle with yourself and say, maybe there are a couple things that you can gain from this that can help you get a better insight as to what is going on within your heart. So again, in this bargaining, just notice how maybe with your children, maybe you are feeling, powerless as to what are you going to do now that they can't go to school, right? How far behind are they going to be in academics, or in their sports, or in the goals that they had, and now they can't even continue those activities they were doing. So maybe there's regret and guilt and bargaining there. Maybe it's with your own health. Maybe it's with your finances. Maybe it's with God again. It could play out in many different ways. Maybe it's with your spouse, with the government, with however, again, different ways that this could play out. So notice what it is for you. Don't judge it, and just become aware of it. And then keep moving through those stages. And the next one is the hard one. The next stage is the tough one. So let's talk about depression. Because if we don't know how to look within, if we don't know what to do when we look within, different ways that this is impacting us, and the pain can take so many different forms. Don't let the fear scare you. Don't let the depression or the deep sadness scare you. You're not the only one experiencing this deep sadness, this deep fear. You got almost the whole globe feeling the way you are. Extra kindness and gentleness to yourself in this stage. So, depression. Now, the word depression here is used kind of loosely, so it's not the clinical diagnosis of depression that we are talking about. And I would call it more of a deep sadness. A deep sadness where you are finally kind of realizing what is going on. So you might find that after you've had moments of anger, moments of bargaining, moments of denial, then you got these little spurts of just breaking down and crying, or really experiencing deep, deep fear and um, just that sense of anxiety, but more of like the deep fear, the deep, deep fear, or the deep, deep sadness. Now, it's these emotions that if we don't know how to handle them, if we don't have tools in place to be able to cope with these emotions, that's when life gets hard. That's when bargaining, anger, denial are easier things to do, because now we are projecting our emotions outwardly, and we are focusing on the outside rather than looking within. Because if we don't know how to look within, if we don't know what to do when we look within, how am I going to handle that deep sadness that I have? What about that panic I'm experiencing? How am I going to deal with that one? So if we don't have these tools, then that's why unconsciously our body is kind of protecting us from going into that stage where we're now feeling. Because the depression, or the stage of deep sadness or deep fear, is in the present moment, is like, I'm feeling this right now, and it's also about my future. So it is a scary place to be at. Whereas the anger and the denial and the bargaining have a sense of, I don't need to really feel so deeply. So that's where I encourage you to reach out for help, for professional help, for tools that I will provide you as well. There are many ways to be able to process through these really uncomfortable feelings. And it is important that we get through that stage. So, this stage of depression, this stage of deep sadness and fear, is a necessary stage to go through. We can't skip it. We can't get to the stage of acceptance, which is our goal, if we don't really feel deeply what is going on. So, and by what is going on, I mean, you know, really looking at, for you, how this is impacting you, obviously, but also what are the emotions, what are the deeper needs that you have, and what are those deeper fears, and being able to reach out to professional, or to with the tools that I will give you, that will be just at the comfort of your own home. You won't even need to do anything else, and we'll do a few we'll do a few actual practice sessions on video that you could do, and that could help you with these really overwhelming emotions, that, the unconscious tendencies to run away from these emotions. So back to that deep sadness and fear. It's in terms of what's going on right now. I'm adding the emotion of fear, because that's really deep down of what we're experiencing. See how that plays out for you. Again, it could be that you are finding you're breaking down, and you're being a lot more emotional than normal, that you feel this sense of pain. Maybe you're feeling pain for the whole world. If you're an empath, you are feeling this on a deep level. You're feeling the pain that the world is going through. The people who are losing their jobs and are being, they're sick or they're dying. You're feeling that, and maybe you're feeling the pain of what you are losing. You are the one that's losing opportunities, your job. Um, however, there's so many different ways that this is impacting us, and the pain can take so many different forms. So see that for yourself, what it is. And it is when you are in that present moment that you can feel these feelings. And I will give you a lot of different ways that I talk to my clients about processing these deeper feelings. So stay tuned for more videos on that. But you might find also that you kind of tend to withdraw a little bit. You might find that you are a little more down and not feeling like your normal self. So all these are normal reactions. Don't judge yourself. Don't let anyone push you through this, meaning like you have to get over this. Don't try to explain to people who see you in this stage that this is something you need to go through, that this is a stage of feeling these deeper feelings is okay. As long, again, as you are able to use the right tools to get through this, because we don't want you stuck in this either. And there's no timeline in terms of how long you need to be in this, but you don't want to stay too long in this either. So our goal is to get to the acceptance stage. And if you do find that you get stuck in any of these other stages, or in the depression stage, then you feel that the tools that you are finding are not enough, then it is the time to reach out for professional help. And but I think that it's very possible that you will not need that, and that this does not become, like a permanent thing, and that it's more of this phase, this stage that you're going through, and that don't let it scare you. Don't let the fear scare you. Don't let the depression or the deep sadness scare you. Allow yourself to feel that, to use the tools that I'll give you or that you will find. So many different practitioners are offering right now so many wonderful tools, and it's just everybody is doing their part to help each other. So there are many resources out there. So don't let what you're feeling scare you, and know that you're not alone. You're not the only one experiencing this deep sadness, this deep fear. And it's interesting because maybe you felt these things before and you felt like you were the only one feeling these things. Well, guess what? Right now, you are definitely not the only one feeling this. You got almost the whole globe feeling the way you are. So at least that's a little bit of a comforting feeling that you're not alone in this. Everybody's experiencing this in a different way, but it is what I was saying in the beginning. It is the same emotion. It is really the same emotion that we are all experiencing. It's just it varies the way we express it or the way we show it to the world or to ourselves. So, extra kindness and gentleness to yourself in this stage in particular, because it can be the hardest one. And again, if you feel that you need the support, I am here for you, and there are many practitioners out there also here for you in this particular moment. And a lot of us are discounting our services as well to help all these people who are really need the support. So, having said that, the good news is that the next stage is what's coming up, and it's the good stage. All of the stages are good. And it's just that this last one is where we're actually feeling better. We're actually starting to feel a sense of peace and calm. So let's talk about that one. Whatever we were doing before, we have to change that and do something else. Had our goals, we had our plans, we had our routine, we had the way we were going that way, and pivot and go that way, because I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to escape to. It's the time to have faith. It's the time to trust. It's the time to surrender. I see that the biggest opportunities was hiding in those deepest, darkest moments, in this that you wouldn't have been able to find had this not happened. Okay, so we made it to the last stage, and this stage is where we are actually starting to accept what is going on and the changes that have come about. Now, my clients ask me, does that mean that if I accept this, it means I'm okay with it? No, it does not mean that you're okay with it. It does not mean that you like it. It does not mean that this is the way you want to live. but it does mean that you are surrendering to what is. It means that you are allowing what is going on to be your new reality for now. It means that you are accepting what is happening and you are starting to adjust to what is happening. And it also means that in your heart, you're starting to feel a little more peace. So it's the acceptance, not the forceful acceptance of you just got to live with this, but more of the acceptance of let me see how I can make lemonade out of lemons. And let me see how I'm going to use this opportunity or this difficult challenge as an opportunity. It's where you move from being kind of resistant to the change that's going on, because for all of us, this has been a huge change. Whatever we were doing before, we have to change that and do something else. So that we our human nature is to resist when there is such a huge change that's required of us. So in the acceptance stage, you stop resisting the change so much and you're starting to kind of flow with this new change. Another big thing that you do here in this stage is that you learn how to pivot. And pivot is one of my favorite words right now because it is what we are being asked to do, meaning that we had a certain idea of what we were doing in the next month or 2 or 3, and we had our goals, we had our plans, we had our routine, we had our jobs, we had our whatever we had, and none of that is working now. We all have to pivot. We have to stop the way we were going that way and pivot and go that way. So, and that pivoting takes many different forms. It could be pivoting in 100 different things in your life. It could be pivoting in 200 different ways. So it's even in your relationship, like I was mentioning earlier. Right now, the how much tension and distress there is in between couples is really off the charts. And so there's pivoting that needs to happen there too, meaning my ways of communicating with you and relating to you, I have to pivot that too, because it's not gonna be okay in our family if I continue my old ways and now we're stuck with each other at home, right? And each one of us has their old ways of handling things. Well, that's not gonna work this time because I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to escape to release some of that tension. So it's really, really forcing us to this whole situation is really forcing us to turn within and pivot with external plans, pivot with internal behaviors and thought processes. I will have more videos on some of those discussions with for couples, for marriages and things like that. But for the purposes of this video, again, it is in the acceptance, you are starting to be better at pivoting. So you pivot, you adjust, you adapt to the new situation. And you also see that there is a possibility that this could be something good, that something could come out of this that could be beneficial. And I know a lot of the times it seems like the most impossible thing that this horrific situation right now could have benefits, and we might not see these benefits for a while on a collective level or on an individual level. You might not see any benefit out of this. You might only see negatives out of this for a while. But I do invite you to, when you are in that stage of acceptance, I do invite you to consider and to open up to the possibility that there could be another way of looking at this, that there could be something beneficial that could come out of this. And we do not know. We do not have the whole picture of our of what is the best for us. So we have to really trust. It's the time to have faith. It's the time to trust. It's the time to surrender. And it is that in the acceptance stage, we surrender and we trust and we have faith and we are willing to see that perhaps there is a hidden opportunity in this. And I know that in the hardest of times in my personal life, in the hardest, deepest, darkest times of my life, that I saw no way out, that I saw completely impossible to overcome, that I thought I wasn't going to make it through. Looking back at those moments, at those stages, at those years, at those months, at those days, I see that the biggest opportunities was hiding in those deepest, darkest moments. And it's not just in my personal experience, it is with a lot of my clients as well, and the people that I associate with, that I see that it was in those hardest times that something was hiding, a big opportunity, a big hidden gem, something was hiding in there, that they were able to discover it. It wasn't easy to discover it. It wasn't the most obvious thing to discover. It was hidden. But as they started to grow, as they started to look at those deeper feelings, at those stages I'm talking about, and started to surrender, then that gem started to reveal itself. So I do want you to just have that on the back of your mind, even if you feel right now in the midst of this, and you're angry and you're upset and you're feeling depressed and you're feeling all kinds of emotions. Even if that's where you're at, again, do not force yourself to surrender or to feel the acceptance, but just know that there's a possibility that what's coming next for you is that deeper sense of peace, of acceptance, of really finding a hidden opportunity in this that you wouldn't have been able to find had this not happened. So these were the 5 stages of grief applied to the coronavirus crisis, in the way that I've been seeing it with my clients, with myself, and my colleagues. And I hope it made sense to you. I hope it's something that you felt was a little helpful. Even if you get one thing out of it, that is plenty. And we will continue this conversation. I will be providing you many different tools and ways to help you through this. Leaving you in whole wellness. Bye-bye.